In this episode of Pop Culture Weekly, I talk with Landry Jones, Luc Besson, and Zoe Bleu all about their brand new film, Dracula, A Love Story. Let's go!
Welcome to Pop Culture Weekly with Kyle McMahon from iHeartRadio. Your pop culture news, views, reviews, and celebrity interviews on all the movies, TV, music, and pop culture you crave weekly. Here's Kyle McMahon.
Hello and welcome to Pop Culture Weekly with Kyle McMahon, the show where we celebrate pop culture, question our life choices, and once again prove that no matter how many times Dracula is rebooted, I will always show up. It's true. Cape, optional. Emotional investment, mandatory. I'm Kyle McMahon, and today this episode is all about Dracula, A Love Story, the bold, gothic, romantic reimagining of the world's most famous vampire, this time from director Luc Besson and starring Landry Jones and Zoe Bleu. Yes, Landry Jones as Dracula? Yeah. You can imagine how freaking awesome it is. And yes, that Dracula, the one who refuses to die, much like my hope that one day I'll stop crying at Gothic horror romance. But I think, spoiler alert, I won't. All right, so later in the show, I'll be talking one-on-one with Luc Besson, and then I'll be speaking with Caleb and Zoe about bringing this haunting, tragic, very emotionally blunt version of Dracula to life. But first, we need to talk about Dracula himself, because this man has been through everything. Dracula is basically like the Madonna of horror icons, right? Like every generation gets their version. Every era insists that this one is definitive, and somehow there's always room for one more reinvention. Every era projects its anxieties onto Dracula and says, okay, but what if this time he represents us? So let's rewind for a moment. When Dracula originally hit theaters in 1931 from, of course, Universal Pictures, where Bela Lugosi iconically played Count Dracula, he was like a pure foreign menace. You know, it was old world, seductive but threatening, like basically Victorian paranoia with cheekbones. This Dracula wasn't emotional, right? He wasn't misunderstood. He didn't want love or acceptance or understanding. He wanted your blood and potentially your real estate. Then in the 1950s, Hammer Films came along and said, what if Dracula was hot? And suddenly we had Dracula, sweaty, sensual, and very aware of the camera and great angles. The fangs were sharper, the blood was bloodier, and the subtext stopped pretending that it wasn't the actual text. This was Dracula as sexual panic, as temptation, as your parents are very uncomfortable with this Dracula. The Hammer version, of course, starred Christopher Lee as Dracula. Peter Cushing was Dr. Van Helsing, which I think arguably was more so the star in the 1958 Hammer Dracula. And the Hammer version went on to produce 8 sequels, 6 of which had Christopher Lee as Dracula, and 4 of which had Peter Cushing reprising his role as Van Helsing. Then Dracula kind of went back to his coffin until the 90s. For the most part, he was in the Monster Squad, things like that, but otherwise, you know. Fast forward to the late 20th century and things get tragic. By the time we hit the classic Bram Stoker's Dracula, Dracula isn't just a monster anymore. He's a man cursed by love. It was, 1992 that it came out, produced and directed by Francis Ford Coppola, like an iconic director. Of course, it had an ensemble cast with Gary Oldman as Dracula, Winona Ryder, Keanu Reeves, Anthony Hopkins, Sadie Frost, and that closing credit bop, Love Song for a Vampire, which was written and performed by Annie Lennox. Love her. In Bram Stoker's original Dracula novel, Count Dracula is described in many different ways through otherness, like over and over again. And Bram Stoker's Dracula, the 1992 film, really kind of doubles down on that. It's also been said that the 1992 film kind of suggests and drew upon the fears in the 90s of AIDS, which in that time was this kind of unchecked manic fear that the spread of AIDS is like, invading people's bloodstreams just by being next to somebody who had AIDS. And so there are schools of thought that say that Bram Stoker's Dracula, the 92 film, kind of played on that as well. Dracula isn't just a monster anymore. He's a man cursed by love. This is the era where Dracula stops saying, "I will drink your blood," and starts saying, "I've crossed oceans of time for you," which is either incredibly romantic or the biggest red flag imaginable. But the 92 version gave us really operatic heartbreak and the idea that Dracula isn't necessarily evil. He's just emotionally wrecked and immortal, which honestly feels worse. And then there was the TV version where they said Dracula, but make him flexible. There was a BBC TV adaptation in 2006, which was very revisionist, I would say, where it has Mark Warren, who plays Count Dracula, who's brought to England in an attempt to cure his syphilis, which is pretty wild. Then on NBC, 2013-2014, there was the TV series Dracula, where Jonathan Rhys Meyers was posing as an American businessman who wants to bring modern science to the Victorian society, where really he's just Dracula and wants to get revenge on those who had betrayed him. And then the 2020 Dracula miniseries for the BBC, which you can find on Netflix. It was a Netflix co-production, which adds twists like he can drink the blood of somebody and then like pick up their skills. And then there were Dracula sort of adjacent things, like Last Voyage of the Demeter, which I absolutely loved, and is literally, that entire movie is one chapter from Bram Stoker's Dracula. The chapter's called The Captain's Log, and it follows the crew of the Demeter, the ship, who unknowingly are transporting Dracula to London. Really, really, really great movie. And a fresh way to tell it. It takes that one chapter, and I really loved it. And through all that, through all those different adaptations, we entered the identity era of Dracula, where he's the anti-hero, the victim. Dracula as commentary on isolation and addiction, power, grief, masculinity, colonialism. Pick your trauma, Dracula's had it. Which brings us to Dracula, a love story. And I really, really love this version. What's fascinating, I believe, about Dracula, a love story is it doesn't try to outdo the mythology, doesn't try to pile on lore or wink at the audience. It doesn't scream franchise potential, here's all these spin-offs. Instead, it really asks like a kind of quiet question. What if Dracula isn't terrifying because he's this immortal monster? What if he's terrifying because he's a man that can't stop feeling? It really, Luc Besson, the director, treats Dracula like a man trapped inside his own legend. He's not battling vampire hunters, he's battling time. He's watching the world move on without him, and with him without his love. And in that way, this Dracula feels like a natural evolution of the character. Sadder, more human. Which is crazy because the most undead character in cinema history is still being used to tell us something painfully alive. And somehow, I'm still emotionally available to be hurt by it. I do a whole brief history of Dracula in movies video up on my YouTube at Pop Culture Weekly, so make sure you check that out and let me know what you think about it. Dracula, a love story, like where it fits in the Dracula canon or interpretations of Dracula is fascinating to me because it's less about mythology mechanics and more about the emotional consequences, which I think is bold and risky and very much my thing. And that tone starts at the top with Luc Besson. So let's take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm sitting down with the man who decided Dracula needed more romance, more pain, and frankly, more emotional devastation. We'll be back in 60. All right. Welcome back to Pop Culture Weekly. Joining me next is the writer and director of Dracula, A Love Story, the filmmaker behind Leon the Professional, The Fifth Element, and Lucy, and Madonna's music video, Love Profusion. Let's jump into my conversation with the one and only Luc Besson. Thank you so much for joining me, Luc. I really appreciate it.
Hello, Kyle.
I love the film. Dracula is. I'm a huge fan of your work. I'm a huge fan of Dracula. So you doing Dracula was like I had to watch it, and then I watched it, and I absolutely love it. So kudos
so
to
much.
you. Of course,
Thank you so much, sir.
So let me ask you, from my understanding, you wanted to tell this, this kind of untold story, this love story, rather than, the things we've kind of seen so often in interpretations of this. Why was that important for you?
The most important for me was to do another film with Caleb Landry Jones, the main actor, because we made a previous film together called Dogman.
Yeah.
I love the actor. He's a genius. And we want to do another movie together. And we dropped a couple of names. Dracula was in the list. I read the book again, but I read the book when I was like 15. And, at 15, your sensitivity is kind of like... So the only thing I've seen at 16 was the vampires, the blood, and all this. But when I read it again, what struck me was the love story, because it's basically the story of a man who waits 400 years because he wants to see his wife again.
Yeah,
and that's the story I want to tell. I was not so interested by the rest. I want to tell this story, so I try to be a little faithful and to the book and take some elements of vampirism and all this, but more to play with it rather than be on it. I stay focused on the loneliness of this man. Everybody wants to be immortal, but it's a curse if you're not with the people you love.
Yeah.
So that's the contrast that I love.
When as you were kind of developing it, was there a specific, modern fear that you kind of were thinking of as you were doing this, like, maybe loneliness or grief or something? Is there a modern fear that tied into this?
I think an artist is always the reflection of the time, of his time. When I was very young, when I did like Léon, for example, or Nikita, the world was pretty healthy and pretty bourgeois. Everything was good, and as an adolescent, I want to kick. I want to push, I want to break the things. Now, when you're today on the society and you watch the misery, it's very hard, and it's all based on power and money, and it's really rough like this. Then you want to propose the opposite. You want to say, okay, guys, let's take some love a little bit. Let's talk about something that we forget a little bit. Let's go to another time. Yeah, it's true. At the time, we don't have the phone, but it was not so bad, actually. Just the relationship between people and the love and the respect and there's lots of things that we lose now a little bit.
Yeah. What do you think the biggest creative risk for you was in making this?
If you start to think about risk or fear, do another job. Because you don't know what the people wants to see. You don't know anything. You don't know if it's going to work. An old director, when I start, say to me, it takes 2 years to make a good movie, and it takes 2 minutes to fuck it up. and he was right. The Dracula on the editing room a week before the mixing is not so good, because you need to add this and this. It's almost like an engine. If you turn every little things, then the engine will works better. I made to make a good movie is a miracle. It really is really a miracle. So I'm lucky I did a couple of miracles.
For you, how do you balance beauty and terror without kind of canceling each other out?
Oh, that's interesting. You have to do it organically. Like what served the purpose of the scene. So sometimes, for example, Caleb is gorgeous as a Greek statue. He's gorgeous, and sometimes is ugly. But it depends of like what do you have to say. So you have to be very careful and play very softly with this. Like for example, when he's 400 years old, he's scary. But sometime when you talk about love, you almost love him. He became lovable.
I absolutely do. That was actually one of the things I was going to mention to you is that in all of the, media that I've consumed with Dracula over the years, I never really liked him as a character. And with this, with your interpretation of this, I felt for him. I felt like, wow, are there people that I would love that would make me be this way? And then I'm this villain to so many, but at the end of the day, it's kind of a tragic love story that in some ways could probably, touch upon us all if there's those people that we love so much in our own lives. You know what I mean?
I totally agree with you. But I love this kind of character. Leon, for example, was the same kind of guy. This big, tall, is a killer. How can we love a killer? But in the same, he doesn't know how to write and read, and he's just a killer. But he's the only one who can save a little girl. And then suddenly we don't want him to die. Even if he's a villain, he has to die. He killed everyone.
Yeah.
So, but we that's Beauty and the Beast.
I love that. And I know, and I'll be promoting the heck out of people seeing it in theaters, but I've got to ask, as a fan of cinema and preservation, I really hope for personal reasons and other that there is a great 4K, home video release later on after it's successful in movie theaters, but, with commentary from you. And I love this film so much that I would love as much as we can to have it, your thought process behind it, and I think it's so important for future filmmakers and future actors and that sort of thing that just my 2 cents.
I will do my best to serve you.
Thank you. Do you think that the monsters that we, watch, do you think that they tell us more about our truths than our heroes do?
Probably. Because we don't expect from a monster to be good, but we expect from a hero to be good all the time. So at the end of the day, the hero is a little boring because he's always winning, he's always the best, he's always like, sure, okay. Don't you have any problem in your life? So like I took this example the other day. It's like you take, for example, Schwarzenegger in what's the name? Terminator. Okay, how can you beat Terminator? No, you can't. The guy is a machine. It's like boom, boom, boom. But imagine, and then I like the movie for sure, but I stay a little out of the thing because I can't participate to that. But if suddenly Terminator sit down and Schwarzenegger start to cry and say, "I miss my mom so much," then I want to see the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
I love that. Luc, thank you so much. I cannot wait for everybody to see this. I'm going to be on the rooftop screaming for people to go see it in movie theaters because it's really just so good. And it needs to be seen first, in my opinion, if you can, at a theater. So thank you, Luc.
I have a question for you.
Of course.
Do you have a heater in your studio? Because you look like you're at the North Pole.
I'm on the East Coast, and we've had this like polar vortex thing, and it's like -1, and it never is. So, so yeah, I'm. But they got to pay the bills here and get the heater turned on. So
I send you some sun from here.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Luc Besson. Okay, first of all, if you weren't already sold on Dracula, A Love Story, I don't know what else you want from cinema. Secondly, I love hearing a filmmaker talk about Dracula like he's a tragic figure rather than like a franchise obligation. And that emotional depth that Luc has created carries straight through into the performances of the cast. So let's take one last quick break for 60 seconds, and when we come back, I'm talking with the stars of Dracula, A Love Story, Caleb Landry Jones and Zoe Bleu. See you in 60. Thanks for supporting our sponsors who allow us to bring the show to you each and every episode. Welcome back to Pop Culture Weekly. If you've seen Dracula, A Love Story, you know that everything hinges on the performances. Caleb Landry Jones, who I spoke with for the Luc Besson film, Dogman, he brings this intensity to Dracula that's so raw, so wounded, and extremely unsettling in the very best way. And Zoe Bleu brings warmth, vulnerability, and this grounding humanity, which is essential when you're acting opposite a centuries-old vampire who has a lot of feelings. And together, they make this story feel intimate rather than franchisey, and devastating instead of distant. So let's get into my conversation with Caleb Landry Jones and Zoe Bleu.
Thank you both so much for speaking with me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Of course. Nice to meet you. So, first of all, the film is absolutely incredible. I'm a huge Dracula fan. So, especially from that perspective, oh my God, it's probably my favorite interpretation of it that I've ever seen. It really is. I love it. So,
thank you so much.
Of course. Caleb, if I could start with you. I've talked to you before. We talked with Dogman, and you are kind of known for getting lost, disappearing into your roles. How did you do that for Dracula?
I was going to say, I'm never that lost. There's always a director telling you, no, that way. Exit is that way. And you're supposed to go up the stairs. But I don't know. I'm not sure.
Was there anything that you had to confront as an actor that you weren't expecting with Dracula?
I think every job, there's stuff you've got to confront. You just don't know what it is until you're doing it. And even when you're doing it, sometimes you're not aware of it. And sometimes you're aware of it after the fact. But with each character, with every film, this happens to some degree. I think when you're on a film like this, which is asking for so many different things, it can be challenging, but that challenge also ends up building that performance into something stronger. All of those tasks and all of those things that you're learning or getting a sense of usually find their way into the film in some way or another. So I think it's more about being a sponge to everything Luc puts out on the table and soaking that up and keeping what sticks to you and letting go what doesn't. And Luc is really amazing in that way of working together in that way. He will have very specific things that he wants, but within those specifics, that usually opens something up into a bigger, broader place because he was so specific in the beginning about whether it's I want the voice to be low, but I don't want it to be too slow, or you know what I mean, something like this, or a reptile, or with the breath. He wanted with the breath. He said from the beginning, and it's very difficult to breathe, but these things become very big, and they suddenly become into how you show one breakdown versus another breakdown emotionally, or and these things start to do that for you.
I love that. And Zoe, for you, actually, this is for both of you, but start with Zoe. You're playing, some legendary, almost, or for certainly iconic work, characters and stories and beats and that sort of thing. Although it's, its own interpretation.
Yeah.
Do you feel any kind of like were you nervous? Like, oh my gosh, this is like a Dracula movie, or were you able to be like, okay, it's another project I'm going to throw myself into, or did you feel that weight at all?
I definitely felt that way in the beginning. I was getting a little in my head about it, to be honest. It's hard not to when there's been so many iconic Draculas. I know you probably felt similar, like big shoes to fill. But then I think as soon as I stepped into that room with Luc, he opened the script. I was sat next to Caleb, and we broke down the script together. I understood that this is an entirely different, I keep saying creature. It is. It's a different world, and it's one that's filled with so much more light and love and magic, and there's a humor in this Dracula that you've never seen before.
Yeah.
In Dracula, and that's so nice because we need more light-hearted, content, stories. We need love, and love is, I think, a manifestation of light, and how powerful it is that a man waits 400 years for his beloved to come back to him, and
he's pretty patient.
That is patience.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when she comes back, he's pretty patient, I think.
He's such a gentleman. Have you ever? An actual gentleman. You wouldn't expect that in a Dracula movie. So you kind of have to throw away all your other preconceptions about what it's meant to be, or how, comparing yourself to other actresses who portrayed Mina or Elizabeth, blah, blah, blah. And you just have to let go and trust your director and soak in the surroundings of the set and trust your fellow actor.
But I think Luc's movies also very much ask you from the get-go to go with him on it, As an audience member, you're asked. I feel like all his movies ask you this because they're going to take you to some wacky places that you're not expecting, and some will shock you, and some you'll be pleasantly surprised, and others you will never forget. I think for the rest of your lifetime. There are scenes from multiple movies of his that I'll never forget.
Oh yeah,
Chris Tucker screaming under the door.
Yes.
Or your mother in the office in Big Blue. I can't go on that plane. I can't do this. I can't. There's some. We're showing the photo of the dolphins to her. That scene is... I love the scene. But he asks you to go with him, and very much when working with him, he asks you in the same way. And like the audience member, we kind of both have to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Which is just go with him and search for this thing that we're all looking for.
It's
interesting. Once you give your hand, it's like, what?
Yeah.
It's like, you're along for the ride. Yeah.
What do you call that in the water with those channels that pull you real fast?
Current.
Yeah, like a current.
Undertow?
No, not an undertow. Because I like the either way you're not breathing.
When I was talking to Luc, I said to him, it's interesting because as much as I love Dracula and the lore and the various interpretations, I've never really liked him, the character.
I feel that.
And with this, I was like, okay, I can kind of relate. I don't have a love like that I would wait 400 years for, maybe like really good tacos or something. But like, there are people that love people so much that they would do this. And so you kind of, it's the human element almost, that like kind of basic need where like, who are the people in my life that I love that I would follow for 400 years or wait for 400 years to reunite with them again? And then for me, it was like, okay, I kind of get it. You know, I don't hate this monster. I can empathize with this man, if that makes sense.
Beautiful.
I think in most all the, I mean, I haven't seen all of them, but they're always playing with this distance to the character, and this, you know, and it's all about this distance and where, how much and how little, and this is what is getting played with so much in those films, and Luke takes that away very quickly, you know, and that is something that I was also excited by, because we'd never heard from Dracula this much, you know. We'd never seen him this much. We'd never heard from him this much. We never knew about that relationship to the degree that we get to learn about it.
And that he has the capability to feel so much. He's not so stone cold. For someone who's got, you know, who's dead, his heart is pumping loud, you know. So.
Yeah. I love it. I love both of you in it. I love the film. Thank you so much. And I can't wait for everybody to see this film. I really can't.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you, too.
You too.
Caleb Landry Jones and Zoe Bleu. And honestly, Dracula, A Love Story is one of those films that reminds you why this Dracula story, these stories of Dracula keep getting retold. It's not because we've run out of ideas, but because every generation finds something new to confess inside of these stories. This version is romantic, it's tragic, it's gothic, and it understands that the scariest part of immortality is having to live with everything that you've lost, which, cool, totally normal thing for a movie to emotionally ruin me. As always, if you like what you heard, follow, subscribe, rate, review, all the things that tell the algorithm gods that I'm doing my very best. I'm Kyle McMahon. This is Pop Culture Weekly, and until next time, watch something on your watch list, embrace the drama, and remember, even Dracula just wanted to be loved. All right, I'll see you next episode. I love ya. We out.
Thank you for listening to Pop Culture Weekly. Hear all the latest at popcultureweekly.com.
Dracula, a love story. I wanna sing more, but I gotta pee. Dracula, a love story. Go see it now and then tell me.